tolerance is extinction.
Part 1 opens with Cable doing some solitary target practice, to the chagrin of Cyclops, who's noticed how his son makes himself scarce whenever he's in the room. This leads him to question his ability to be an effective father. We also learn that Cable and Bishop got separated during the time travel, and Cable actually arrived in the future alone. How he survived beyond that point is a mystery. Scott looks to the painting of he, Charles, and the OG X-Men, wishing that he could have been shown the way, but Jean reminds him that some lessons are taught and others are learned. A phrase that doesn't really make sense the more you think about it, but we'll let it slide. I mean, Jean threw a whole building last episode without fainting. She's allowed a couple passes, and get ready to cash a couple more passes because she's gonna have even more moments in this episode. The X-Men meet in the war room, where Cable explains how Bastion used the Genosha Massacre and the Prime Sentinels to start a 300-year war that eventually led to a human utopia being built on the backs of enslaved mutant survivors. Wolverine calls out Cable for not stopping Genosha, but Cable clarifies, it's not that he didn't stop Genosha, he couldn't. Every time he's tried, he always gets pulled out of time. Beast theorizes that the Genosha Massacre might be a fixed point in time, explaining why Cable slid back to the future before he could warn Madeline or anybody else. During the meeting, the UN leaks satellite footage of Xavier's proclamation to the Shi'ar Empire. But now the X-Men know Bastion's endgame, and the pieces are already being arranged on the board. So it's time to take action. Cyclops prepares to take Jean and Cable out for some recon, following a lead Cable has from the future about one of Bastion's facilities. While all this is going on, Jubilee is still with Roberto, whose mom is getting ready for a charity dinner to support the victims of Genosha. Her humanitarian efforts, or mutantarian I guess, are quickly soured when she accuses the X-Men of doing nothing. This upsets Jubilee enough to hit her with a "you people" line. So she and Roberto head off to do some retail therapy. Before heading out with Cyclops and Cable, Jean has a moment with Nightcrawler, both of whom are tending to an unconscious Rogue. She is dealing with the loss of Madeline in a way that only she can, as a telepath who shares her memories to this day, even down to remembering how it felt to carry and deliver Nathan. But Nightcrawler says it doesn't matter if she actually did any of these things because she actually feels them. Those feelings are real, just like his relationship with Rogue is real. He and Rogue could have been strangers or enemies since Mystique abandoned him, but they became close anyway, and that's what matters. Blood is blood. Family is a choice, as he said. Once again, Nightcrawler is the emotional core of the group. Meanwhile, Mr. Sinister and everyone else on Team Evil, aka we really do think we're on the right side of history, are preparing for the next phase of the real Operation Zero Tolerance. Mr. Sinister is giddy over the fact that he has a whole host of new guinea pigs to play with in the form of more people to turn into Prime Sentinels, all while Val Cooper laments over the fate of Magneto, who is spread eagle on an X, forced to watch as the final mutant solution enters phase 2. Val begs him to say something, whether it's to forgive her or curse her existence. Also,
sorry.
Back at the X-Mansion, Trish Tilby shows up to apologize to Beast. He gets in a light verbal jab before hearing her out. At the same time, he's examining the remains of Bolivar Trask to learn a bit more about the Prime Sentinels and who else might be one. Meanwhile, Team Summer starts their recon mission by checking out that lead about Bastion's location. But instead they find an old house with a kind old woman inside. She tells them to make themselves comfortable, and Jean's telepathy starts picking up memories. We're shown a highlight reel of Bastion's conception and childhood. Basically, this version of Bastion is as much a mutant as he is a Sentinel. Back at Bastion HQ, we see that the next phase of Bastion's endgame is all ready for rollout. He takes this opportunity to wax poetic about Operation Zero Tolerance to Val Cooper, in a speech that includes way too many familiar lines.
You should have warned us about Genosha.
Well, I did. But I also said bully an underdog too long and people start feeling sorry for them. Alliterative allure aside, Genosha's not genocide. It's time management. In 100 years, mutants outnumber humans 10 to 1. And generations later, human extinction. Enter Operation Zero Tolerance. Before today, this fella was your average Joe. With all this mutant loving, people like Joe turn to dial-up chat rooms to speak freely, to connect. Builders lay off a dozen workers and hire one mutant with the strength of 10 men. The human community is scared. Of course they are. They've been told over and over that the future is leaving them behind. But I invite them to be relevant again.
The things that Bastion's talking about, from they're gonna take our jobs to these people feel unheard and need to connect, are things that people in this position have said time and time again. And not just in the past 5 to 10 years, but as far back as we can imagine. You know what I was discovering in 1997? I was watching documentaries like Hate.com on HBO, which was this big expose about how white supremacist groups were using the internet as the new phase of recruitment. That documentary came out almost 25 years ago. We need to talk about these kind of things, and I'm glad properties like X-Men 97 are willing to go there. But enough all that serious shit, we got cameos, bitch! It's time for Baron Zemo, it's time for Dr. Doom.
Do not mistake Doom's collusion as indifference to flagrant war crimes.
Always good to know which malevolent monarchs are okay with war crimes and which ones aren't. We also see that the UN was in on this whole thing. After hearing Bastion's plans, we immediately cut to his master plan at work, as humans all around the world have their Prime Sentinel programming activated unwittingly by Beast of all people, who had Prime Cerebro to locate humans who had Prime Sentinel programming. Everyone from Roberto's butler to Bastion's entire neighborhood to the protesters outside the X mansion. Even our favorite journalist Trish Tilby gets turned, and she just manhandles poor Beast. Morph doesn't fare any better either, turning into Juggernaut, but then getting tossed like Toad. That leaves Wolverine and Nightcrawler as the only ones in the mansion who can stand up to the horde of Prime Sentinels who are attacking the X-Mansion. Now, I really could sum up the rest of this episode simply by saying the X-Men all do insanely cool shit, and I'd be 100% accurate and thorough. Everyone gets moments to shine here. Roberto finally goes full Sunspot to save Jubilee, flight and all, though he does end up flying into his mother's charity dinner where she promptly surrenders him and Jubilee to the Sentinels. Told y'all, that older generation, they'll get you every time. Meanwhile, the Summers clan basically becomes the stars of a 90s action comedy, with Jean mommying Cable while Cyclops gets them out of a crashing Blackbird in a Porsche that he had stashed in the back, then uses some father-son teamwork to plow a path out of there through a cave while Jean uses psychic force fields and levitation to keep them safe, even steering the wheel with her powers, literally carrying the team while her husband and her not-son blast Prime Sentinels to pieces. We actually get to blow these people to smithereens. Or in Wolverine's case, they get sliced to smithereens. My man finally gets to go proper berserker barrage on some bad guys, slicing enemies in half and then some mid-air. But nothing compares to what we see when our boy Kurt Wagner takes center stage. He gets knocked into a bookshelf, causing a pair of swords to fall off the wall, and the moment they fall into focus, you know what time it is.
Why resist the inevitable?
Lady, I got 6 reasons why.
No, mein Freund. Nein.
You know what I said a couple videos ago, how this might just be the best version of Nightcrawler we've had outside the comics? Well, you can remove that might part. This is it. In just 3 episodes of X-Men 97, we've gotten lighthearted fun Nightcrawler, compassionate and thoughtful Nightcrawler, brave and selfless Nightcrawler, man of faith Nightcrawler, and now to complete the box set, we've got swashbuckling Nightcrawler. My man was zip-zapping and boom-bamfing all around the room. cutting fools up left and right. He and Wolverine go literally back to back and face off against the Prime Sentinels, with Rogue literally lying unconscious just a few feet away. Yes, Kurt, protect your sister! This was that shit! Oh my god, it's so good! You would think that the X-Men win, right? No. The Summers family eventually gets overwhelmed, and it's up to Jean to hold up a psychic force field to keep them all from getting blown into bits. Wolverine and Nightcrawler look ahead as what appears to be the entire damn city starts flying their way. And as I said before, Jubilee and Roberto are getting carted off by the Sentinels. Bastion rolls up to the former X-Mansion as it goes up in flames, surveying his work with pride like a firebug delighting in its own fire. But he's quickly summoned back to his base by Mr. Sinister, who alerts him of Magneto's escape at the hands of Dr. Cooper. Bastion returns and puts Cooper up in some gnarly machine stocks of her own. She calls him a monster. He says he was born this way. But Val responds by saying the quiet part out loud, what many fans and mutants alike are thinking right now, while Magneto heads to the North Pole for a counterattack of Omega-level proportions.
I just had the most profound sense of deja vu, as if past, present, and future didn't matter and never had, because we always end up in the same ugly place. Most of us experience tragedies like Genosha as a bit of deja vu before getting on with our day. But the scariest thing about Genosha, it was a thought. The only sane thought you can have when being chased by giant robots that were built to crush you. Magneto was right.
Enough.
This show has given us so many scenes that will go down in X-Men history. Omega-level threat detected. Remember it. Let them thunder, for I am lightning. To me, my X-Men. The Professor X lecture. But this one hit different. There's the coolness factor, but there's way more to this scene than just Marvel cameos. In one fell swoop, Magneto reminds the entire world, literally, why he is who he is. And it's done in a way that makes you understand and even empathize with him, regardless of whether or not you agree with his actions. Now, several people have taken to social media to point out just how fucked up this is, but this is the route that I've seen him taking all season long. I know some folks were skeptical about whether or not Magneto's leadership of the X-Men was true or if he had ulterior motives, but I think this move is a much more in-character heel turn. He tried to be different, and for a while he did it, and he warned y'all, he fucking warned y'all. He even had his nation, his independent mutant nation. He had it all. Now that he truly has nothing to lose, I think we're about to see a whole new brand of no fucks given from Magneto. Back at what's left of the X-Mansion, Wolverine, Morph, and Nightcrawler start picking up the pieces and tending to the wounded. Wolverine tells Morph that Magneto has finally done it, declared war on humanity, and asking where Xavier is when you need him. Just as our favorite bald-headed philosopher makes a crashing return to Earth, he summons the X-Men to his location, hoping that he's not too late. He kinda is, but, A for effort. And we see multiple faces appear as he psychically calls out to his team. The last of those belonging to Storm, which is the only appearance she makes in the episode because this is another Stormless episode, and I'm starting to get a little anxious here. I really hope Storm doesn't just show up at the final hour to make some game-saving play and that's it. We've still got 2 episodes to go, so I'm not gonna make a whole thing about it. All I'll say for now is that Storm title sequence better be epic as all hell or I'm throwing something into the fucking sun. Part 2 starts with Charles Xavier getting out of bed in the destroyed X-Mansion, while the others continue to pick up the pieces. He wheels himself around the mansion in a regular old wheelchair, eventually coming upon the iconic yellow floaty chair covered in dust and skewered by a beam of wood. As a 90s kid, seeing the yellow floaty chair in this state may just be the second hardest thing to watch in this show, right behind Gambit's death. At the same time, Magneto dons his original costume and resurrects Asteroid M. And from here, he'll make his stand and build his new mutant empire, content to let the world of humans die, along with all the other life forms on the planet, including any mutants who don't join him. But fuck them humans, man. Just them damn humans, man. Fuck them, they gotta go. Humans who are in the middle of exacting revenge against any mutant they can get their hands on, including Roberto and Jubilee, who are being cornered by an FOH-led mob. Storm and Forge show up just in time to save them. Finally, Storm has come back to the X-Men. All of this is happening amidst a world of still, quiet Prime Sentinels. Bastion tearfully carries his Prime Sentinel mother to their home and tells her that it's finally quiet outside. Now this is really interesting. In the last episode, Bastion gave like 3 speeches. The man was constantly talking with hardly any action. Then in this episode, he hardly says a word, but he's the power core of an entire army of Sentinels. Back at the X ruins, Scott lets Xavier have it for entrusting Magneto with the team. His anger is palpable, but Xavier stands by his decision, saying that he did it so that Scott and Jean could live out their lives in peace, knowing that Scott would be the one who always fights for the dream that he can never live. And what's Scott's reply?
I still would have had to send Nathan to the future. I'd still be pulled into dealing with Bastion or Magneto or whoever else threatened the world. No matter what, I'll always end up here.
Now I want to highlight just for a minute the lengths that this episode goes to let Xavier have it, primarily from his own team. Xavier knows Magneto better than anyone else. He had to know this was coming. He just had to go and entrust the fate of all life on Earth to fucking Magnus. And then he tries to put it on Cyclops, as if Scott would ever actually leave the team. But he made that point well enough himself, so I won't stay on it very long. Storm and Forge eventually return with Jubilee and Roberto. Forge greets Beast warmly, in the most nerdy way possible, while Storm is immediately embraced by Jean. The sisters are finally reunited, but there's no time for tearful reunions. They have less than 12 hours before the world falls into permanent darkness. Scott splits the team in 2, blue and gold. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time the team has officially been split into blue and gold outside of the comics. Cyclops and Xavier will lead the blue team to go deal with Magneto on Asteroid M, while Storm and Jean take the gold team to shut down Bastion's operation. Beast even thinks they can find a way to restore the Prime Sentinel's humanity. Xavier theorizes that once Bastion is shut down, Magneto will be open to turning the Earth back on. So they all head to Muir Island to re-up on supplies and don new/old outfits, all plucked straight out of their comic origins. This jump back to the super old outfits is something that's gonna have to grow on me, mainly for Jean and Cyclops. Never been a fan of the fully covered head for Psyche, and that Marvel Girl outfit is just way too out of place. Anyway, the preparations are underway, including the creation of a power dampening collar made by Beast and Forge to slap onto Bastion. They even consider making something that'll permanently remove his powers, but Storm objects to that for obvious reasons.
Impress me.
Charles described Bastion as a technopath, which is essentially telepathy for machines. So we calibrate the scrambler to Bastion's frequency and sever his hold over the primes.
If Bastion's abilities operate like our mutations, we can use neutralizer technology to permanently disable his control of prime.
Okay. Rogue and Xavier then have a talk outside. They talk about Remy and how he never saw himself growing beyond his Thieves Guild days. But Rogue isn't just sad, she's angry at the professor. She tells him that maybe if he saw them more as people than as his students, Gambit would still be here. And honestly, I think this energy veers into an area that we've seen a lot in the comics as of late, where Professor X is seen in more of a critical light. And I'm sure he had moments in the past where people grilled him like this, but I definitely feel like in the Krakoa era, that's been the main speed. And if you're keeping up with the Fall of X event, then you know just how bad Charles is willing to be, even if it's for a good reason. But just as Rogue is grilling Xavier good, Magneto rolls up and parks Asteroid M right above the X-Men to do some grilling of his own, and to extend an offer.
I promised a boy a future free of fear, only to watch
his frightened eyes be vaporized inside his tiny skull. Because he believed in me. In the dream you had me sell. How many more of your bones will pave the way to Xavier's future? Where we simper like beggars for tolerance. Your professor's dream is dead, so I offer a new one. Cling to this dying world, or rise to your future and look down upon this fallen pigsty planet.
Hulk, no.
In Genosha, I made a choice. To lead our kind to a new age. I stand by that choice. I will not see any more mutants die.
It's not hard to imagine that after all that's happened, somebody would be willing to switch sides. And Roberto, I think we could have predicted him taking this route. But Rogue? Seeing her hovering up there next to Magneto, it just solidifies her dark era. And I really don't even know if she's gonna rejoin the team by the final episode. But I also don't think that this makes Rogue evil. I don't think she's necessarily gonna become like Magneto. But there it is. The doors to the Church of Magneto are open as the trio fly away. The final preparations begin. Scott and Cable connect one-on-one as father and son, finally. Cable is still somewhat cold towards Jean, but he's warming up to her, and even more so to Scott, which leads us to what may just be the most cathartic scene in all of X-Men 97.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Almost forgot.
Oh, am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
This motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
Xavier also has a psychic meeting with President Kelly, who, on cue, tells Xavier that if things go south, he'll be forced to act. But Xavier's just like,
"We have been here before, President Kelly. If you don't trust me, trust my X-Men."
The teams head off for their respective missions, with Cyclops and Jean sharing one last tender moment before they go. Storm and Jean also have a moment of their own aboard the Blackbird, where they encourage each other.
All this change, it's all the same. Let us do what we do. Believe, not in a dream or our gifts, but in each other.
Make them mind your weather, sister.
And them weather your mind.
Now, this series has gone out of its way to show us how close Storm and Jean are, which I appreciate given their closeness in the comics. But Storm and Rogue always seemed closer to me in the animated series than Storm and Jean. Put a pin in that, because we're going to talk about it more later. Storm and Forge stay in the sky, fighting the Sentinels in the air, while Jean takes the rest down to the ground to find Bastion. Storm puts on an appropriately impressive display of wind and lightning, but she's not really given much to do beyond that. It's more just like a blink and you miss it moment of her doing some big power shit. It looks cool, it's powerful, but that's kinda it. Hopefully, they're just saving the real dope shit for the final episode. The Gold team on the ground have a much better fight, with Morph turning into the Incredible Hulk and going ham on some Sentinels, joined of course by Beast, who can never pass up the opportunity to get in some good nerdy ass quips along with his kick-assery. Jean ends up fighting Mr. Sinister one-on-one, with that delicious villainy of his just oozing out of every line he delivers. Now, the Asteroid M showdown isn't nearly as flashy as the fight on Earth, but it has more weight to it, and even though technically we're rooting for the X-Men, Magneto does do something that I'm sure we all appreciated.
Shut up.
But it doesn't take long for things to start turning for the worse. On Earth, Morph and Beast get caught trying to trap Bastion, who catches them in the act with ease. The Blackbird goes down after it's struck from behind. Same thing with Storm, who gets one shot out of the air by a Sentinel. Mr. Sinister's actually getting his ass whooped properly by Jean, so he activates Cable's latent mind control programming, turning this into a fight between telekinetics. She contacts Cyclops in the psychic plane, giving him a final "I love you" in case she ends up going down. Wolverine manages to get a hold of Magneto's helmet, allowing Charles to finally get in his mind. But Cyclops stops him in order to give Gold Team more time. Magneto isn't about to get caught slacking again, and he throws his helmet on Charles. Now, not only can Charles not use his powers, but his skull is about to be crushed. But before that can happen, Magneto gets impaled by Wolverine. Oh my god, the script flipping just will not stop, and it's making my dick so hard. I love Wolverine's line about the brave being the first to die in war, because it takes a line Magneto said to the team back in the OG animated series, and it turns it on him. But Eric Magnus is not gonna get caught lacking again, and he does what we all knew he was gonna do the moment Wolverine got too close.
No! Magnus! For the love of God, don't do this!
I honestly have no idea what to expect for the final episode. The whole gold team is jacked up, and blue team, oh my god, that shot of Wolverine having the adamantium ripped out of his body. It is a perfect recreation from a very iconic page from the comics, but this was my first time seeing it. I just sat there staring at the screen for like 5 minutes. All I know is this show is absolutely crazy. Critiques wise, I really don't have any, at least not pertaining to the overall plot. All of my critiques for this episode have to do with Storm. So Storm's return. I'm glad to finally see her join the team again. I liked her words of inspiration to the team. I love how you can hear the wisdom in her voice. Also, her protesting the use of the neutralizer tech was both hilarious and on brand. And her sisterly moments of connection with Jean, her saving Jubilee and Sunspot without even needing to attack anyone, all of that was dope. However, I feel like for as much as she missed out on this season, her return felt kinda lackluster. And when she shows back up, the only one who really reacts was Jean, and Jubilee as well, after she had been saved. To be fair, she did make some keen observations while they were having that planning moment, like how Bastion could have easily ended up as one of the founding members of the X-Men had things gone even slightly different. Also, I love how she says she can feel the Earth dying. But hopefully in the last episode, they'll not only give her more scenes to use her powers, but give her some time to truly process everything that's happening with the team. I mean, Gambit is dead. She and Gambit go way back. And since X-Men 97 is all about leaning on more of the comic versions of the relationships, I want her to react to any of the craziness that's been going on here. This is what I was afraid of. I've been saying it since she first left, because now we're in the end game and we really don't have time for a whole bunch of slow, quiet character moments anymore, unless they directly relate to the plot, like with Cyclops or Professor X. Maybe they'll let her turn Earth back on. That would be a great way to show how she is also an Omega level mutant like Magneto, but she's using her powers here not to destroy, but to preserve. But other than that, I have no expectations. I just can't wait to see how this magnificent season ends. So that's what we're gonna be picking up right now. Part 3 starts with Charles and Magneto in a bar early on in their friendship back in the 60s. We also see a quick shot of them using their powers to disarm soldiers during the opening. They have a friendly debate about whether or not mutants should live out in the open. During the conversation, they reveal themselves as mutants to each other, but their friendly debate takes a dark turn when Magneto discovers the truth, that this is all literally in his head. Charles tries to reason with him at first, but when he's not willing to back down, he's left with no other choice but to strong arm his way into Magneto's abilities to repair Earth's electromagnetic field. Now, how he got that helmet off his head, I have no idea, when it was literally crushing his skull and held in place by Magneto's powers. Just like Storm's life-death arc, the show doesn't think we need to see any of that, so they just skip past it. Okay.
Just keep going, just keep going.
So Charles pays for the electric bill of Earth in time to turn the power back on before everything gets cooked by solar radiation. So now the hundreds of deaths, which I'll assume is a mistranslation for millions, doesn't get any worse from the lack of power. Shout out to Doctor Strange performing surgery mid-blackout with his magic, but the Prime Sentinels are also reactivated and immediately go back on the warpath. Throughout this episode, we get more cameos of Marvel heroes, like Daredevil and Cloak and Dagger, doing their best to keep the hordes at bay. Black Panther, King T'Chaka version, Omega Red and the Winter Guard, Psylocke and Alpha Flight, just a bunch of cool cameos all around. We even see Peter Parker and Mary Jane, which means Spider-Man's rescue Mary Jane from the depths of the Spider-Verse mission from the end of his 90s cartoon was successful. And if you're getting the feeling that this is all setting up some sort of animated MCU 90s verse, then I'm right there with you, and I can't wait to see what they revive next. Elsewhere on Earth, the Gold Team is at the mercy of Bastion, who has donned his second form, and Mr. Sinister. Jean has seemingly been defeated by Cable. The rest are tied up in Sentinel wires. During this bit, we learn a juicy tidbit about Bastion's past. Bastion says he's glad Professor X didn't take him in when Mother begged him. We learn that Professor X came to Bastion's house when he was a kid after Cerebro picked him up thinking he was just another regular mutant, but he was turned away immediately by Bastion's mom. Xavier drops this bomb himself, but Bastion thinks it was his mom that got turned away by Xavier. Bastion tries showing Storm his kinky side by choking her while she's tied up, but Storm pulls out the safe word by trying to appeal to Bastion's humanity. She also reveals the truth about Xavier wanting to recruit him, but he just continues on with his villain monologue about how both mutants and humans are obsolete throwbacks soon to be left behind.
Charles Xavier wanted to help you. He came to your mother, but she was too afraid. You would have been one of the first.
Get your filthy paws off her!
I didn't ask for this either. To be born with this programming, this destiny inside me, the urges.
None choose to be born, Bastion. That's why we must never begrudge them being.
Slavery and genocide ain't enough?
As I told Dr. Cooper right before she betrayed me and her kind, people are good. Too damn good.
Bastion puts his plans on the fast track to save humanity from itself, meaning upgrades for everybody. After Sinister makes Cable reveal the exact number of times he tried to prevent the fall of Genosha, that number being 200, yeesh. Bastion prepares to execute Cable, to Sinister's chagrin, of course. But don't worry, Jean rises from the waters in her Phoenix form to save her not son. Is it an ass pull? Yes. Did we see it coming? Yeah. Is it cool?
Hell yes!
She reconstructs the power dampener and places it on Bastion's head, severing his link to the Sentinels. So the Prime Sentinels all fall down like a global game of Ring Around the Rosie. Don't worry, their humanity's intact, so I'm sure they'll wake up just fine. Then Jean defeats Mr. Sinister by reaching into him with her psychic bird powers and unraveling all the DNA that he's used to hold himself together over the years, which makes him rapidly age into a dusty old bobblehead, one that Morph happily mocks with one last little jab before Sinister runs away, weeping at the very sight of himself. The team gets a quick second of downtime where Jean says the Phoenix Force returned to help her protect her son, which piggybacks off a line Cable gave about the bad guys not knowing who his mom was. So we have Jean and Cable fully accepting one another as a family now. Nice. But we don't have time for that. Bastion is pissed. So pissed that he rips Cable's techno-organic arm off and beats him with it, and then absorbs it to assume his final form anime style. After becoming a techno-gargoyle, he heads off to give an encore presentation of the event that killed the dinosaurs, aka he's gonna chuck Asteroid M at Earth. On said Asteroid M, Charles' psychic hijacking has left Magneto with a fractured mind. He has no idea who or what anything is, but Chuck stays with Eric to try and talk him out of it. Or into himself, I guess? Both of them are unconscious, with the danger of their minds being lost forever if Magneto totally breaks while Charles is still linked to him. He warns Jean and Cyclops of the situation, right before Jean warns Blue Team about Final Form Bastion and his Planicide mission. So now they have to fend off a freshly ass-mad Bastion to save the Earth. Speaking of asses from Earth, take a look at President Kelly, who's about to give the okay to initiate the Magneto protocols with other world leaders. King T'Chaka and Captain America warn him against such actions, but does Kelly listen to reason? No. So now we have the AI Antichrist headed to Asteroid M and a planet full of terrified world leaders with doomsday weapons at their disposal. The stage is set for a hell of a finale, leading to one of the best climactic fight scenes in superhero history. Every single conscious member of the blue team gets around with Bastion. Rogue opens up the fight with an iconic
"His name was Gambit. Remember it!"
Rogue whoops Bastion's metallic monkey ass all the way down to Apocalypse's old moon base, throwing headbutts, haymakers, and thunderclaps right into his face, and it is glorious! Also, extra thick! Then a certain somebody finally claims their mutant status proudly and their X-Men codename.
Roberto da Costa, the disowned heir.
The name Sunspot. Definitely got more flair.
Nightcrawler gets some good Banff-laced licks in, but for a brief second I thought they were gonna remind us of what happened the last time Nightcrawler tangled with Bastion in the comics. Glad he didn't go that route. Brilliant teamwork in this scene, with the X-Men using a mixture of well-timed physical attacks and ranged attacks. Cyclops jumps into the fray and goes full Marvel vs. Capcom on that metal ass, dealing a very satisfying mega optic blast.
You'll never hurt my family again!
And Jubilee is the last to take him on, clipping Bastion's wings with the Firework Destructo disc before rearranging his face and chucking his ass into the remnants of Master Mold.
What will you do, child? Slay me with the 4th of July?
Haven't heard that one before. Game over, Sleazoid!
This fight is a treat for the eyes. It's also very cathartic in several ways. We got Cyclops going Ultra Instinct Family Man. We got Rogue slamming her anger into the one who took her bow away from her. We got Roberto taking his rightful place on the right team. And we got Jubilee growing all the way up by helping bring down a real boss instead of just beating them in video games. It's all so freaking cool. And yet, I feel like something's missing. The scene isn't fully earned, almost. Now, I can't speak for everyone else, but I know for me, part of this is because Rogue and Roberto, mainly Rogue, haven't addressed the fact that they allied themselves with a man who nearly destroyed the Earth. It's one thing to say they put their differences aside to get to work, but I feel like this scene would have hit harder if Rogue and Roberto would have had some time to actually reflect on the fact that in their understandable anger, they fought against their own family on Magneto's behalf, only to watch him rip Wolverine apart in front of them. Shouldn't that do something to somebody emotionally, psychologically? Roberto's the only one who shows any regret for this serious lapse of judgment, while Rogue basically reverts to her default setting of spicy but sweet Southern Belle after going all never again in the last episode. Again, one could argue that they don't have time for deep introspective moments when the Earth is about to be destroyed. But it's not like there was zero downtime between one Earth-threatening event and the other. We all know these writers are good at weaving subtlety into big moments, like back when Storm was reasoning with Bastion.
None choose to be born, Bastion. Thus why we must never begrudge the being.
Did you just try to appeal to my humanity? Look at me.
This is that good shit, that good deep shit. Storm says everything with just a close-up of her eyes, her compassion, her unwavering determination, her recognizing Bastion's humanity, fully human and fully mutant. That's what I'm talking about. Why couldn't Rogue have a moment like that? Anything to signal to the viewers that she's aware of how bad a choice she made. I mean, Nightcrawler's right there. They've already had a bunch of scenes like this in the show. Give them one more.
Trask, did he?
Much has happened, Fräulein. Trask survived.
Overall, the scene is well worthy of hype, but once the hype dies down and you have a chance to see it for what it is, you can't help but think of what it could have been. At least that's how I feel. But none of that matters anyway, cause Bastion is still here and he is still pissed. He rises again. even though he's clearly seen better days. A lone Sentinel descends, and Bastion thinks his backup has arrived, but it's actually Gold Team with Beast at the wheel, pulling an old Trojan horse. They land right on top of Bastion, forcing him to use all his remaining strength to keep from being crushed. He's essentially waiting to be finished off at this point, and everyone prepares to do so. Until...
Stand down, team.
We can't give up.
We're gonna do what we've been telling humanity to do for years. Stop fighting the future.
And embrace it.
The X-Men pull an old talk no jutsu. Now this scene gave me pause. I don't hate it, it just feels too convenient. But I understand the message they're trying to convey here. Don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Break the cycle of intolerance and violence. It's obviously a message worth giving, and you can tell that it's having an effect. Jean tells Bastion as he resists that there are more and more people being born mutants, quote unquote, like us. And Bastion hits her with a cold line saying humanity would rather die than have more kids like us. Before, Bastion wasn't calling himself a mutant, but now he's at least acknowledging the fact that this is what he is. Right before the Magneto protocols make themselves known in the form of a gang of nuclear missiles headed for the asteroid. Now I just want to know, how the fuck was this supposed to work? Their brilliant idea to save the world from asteroid M falling to Earth was to blow it up with missiles. Missiles that would strike the gravity core, causing its remains to fall to Earth. So you saved Earth from a falling rock by turning it into slightly smaller falling rocks. Galaxy brain move, guys. We'll see how many thousands will be dead then. The blast also seems to take Bastion, just as he decides to give the whole Unity talk a chance, but there's no confirmation that he was actually killed, so don't be surprised if he pops back up sometime in the near future. And right now, it's time for the X-Men to put in some overtime to prevent Armageddon. And let's not forget about Charles, who is still working on Magneto's mind, trying to get him to reconnect with his identity. He reminds him of their bond and how they're like brothers. Eric says that Charles, like everyone else, has abandoned and hurt him. But Charles reminds him of people like Rogue, and mainly Rogue, but other people who keep Magneto anchored. We get a shadowed glimpse of Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Polaris, Magneto's children. Yes, I know Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are retconned to not be his biological kids, or mutants at all, but that didn't happen until 2014, and we're still in the 90s in this show. In any event, Magneto starts to get a hold of himself before he gets hit with a flashback of World War II Germany. We don't see anything, but we hear boots of World War II bad guys who I can't name because YouTube be YouTubing. Magneto can't see his parents' faces, and it's really distressing for him. But Charles holds on tight and reassures him. He's totally prepared to go down with Eric if he can't save him. So basically, everyone's preparing for the end. Jean and Scott send a telepathic message to Cable to tell him goodbye, which brings their family arc full circle, as Scott is able to do what he couldn't bring himself to do when they sent baby Nathan to the future in the first place: say goodbye. It's actually a really touching scene. I didn't think that this is where his character would end up at the end of the season, but I think this was a better choice than what I was thinking, which was basically that he would completely lose himself and have to walk away from the team for a while because he was just too freaking broken. Wolverine is fighting for his life, calling out Jean's name even while unconscious. Morph sees this and transforms into Jean to tell Wolverine that he loves him, confirming what we all saw coming. And after everyone says goodbye, it's time to go to work. And as everyone on the ground looks up, they prepare for the end. But finally, Xavier gets Magneto to reclaim his identity and resolve in time to wake up. He stabilizes the plummeting asteroid. Everyone cheers on the ground, only to see the asteroid blip out of sight. There's no sign of the X-Men, and the world assumes them dead. Most of the team actually ends up in ancient Egypt, with one very well-known gray-skinned, blue-lipped mutant, while Cyclops and Jean end up in the far-flung future with a young Nathan Summers and one Mother Ascani. In the present, 6 months have passed since Earth's near brush with extinction. Bishop finally returns back from the future and tells Forge of the truth. The X-Men aren't dead. only trapped in time. We also get our second reference to the iconic Days of Future Past cover this season, as Forge stands in front of a board full of the faces of 24 mutants, all X-Men members or allies. Most of the actual X-Men are missing and presumed dead. Cable, Jubes, and Sunspot are listed as AWOL. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are off-world, and the rest will likely be contacted to help form a new team and help get the X-Men back. And that is where we end the season. Well, not quite.
So much pain, my children. So much death.
But something's missing here, or someone. Where's Storm? Where's Wolverine? Where's Morph? Also, Gambit ended up staying dead for the entire season. But as many fans speculated, he will be resurrected by Apocalypse as his Horseman of Death. And it could be that our 3 missing X-Men could fill in the other Horseman slots. Overall, I think this finale was solid. A lot of good action scenes with several character-specific plot lines being wrapped up. But there are also some flaws. Some of them are in the category of, that's not how this really works. Like Jubilee falling out of the asteroid and then breathing and talking in space, as well as having the electronics just turn back on like nothing happened when Xavier turned the electromagnetic field back on. But it's a superhero cartoon, so you're really looking in the wrong place if you're expecting 100% scientific realism or accuracy. I'm more concerned with the flaws in the show's narrative and character development. The level of convenience and contrivance at play here, even for a season finale, was pretty egregious in my opinion. 2 team members switched sides in the previous episode, but we never even address it. No time. Gotta go. Lot happening, lot of action. But if you didn't have time to address it, why did you even do it? What did having Rogue switch sides for half an episode actually lead to? The entire third part of the finale could have played out the exact same way if Rogue had stayed on the team. I accepted every choice she made this season, no matter how questionable or morally reprehensible, all because I thought that it was part of this dark path that she was on that was going to lead to a satisfactory conclusion. But there really was no conclusion. It's like the writers of this episode just forgot everything that happened previously on X-Men. Same thing with Charles hijacking Magneto's mind. From where we left them off in episode 9, that shouldn't have even been possible. Hand-waving past details like this makes sense for inconsequential things like seeing Xavier go to bed after he returned to Earth. Those little things don't matter, but this does. But as I said before, the show just decided we didn't need to see that, or Rogue feeling even a twinge of guilt over her decisions. Just like we didn't need to see Storm do shit. Y'all knew I was gonna talk about it. Let's go. Now I got a lot to say about this. All I ask is that before you type out your rebuttal in the comments, hear me out. When I first saw this episode and Storm's contributions, I wasn't feeling it.
No, sir, I don't like it.
This is Storm we're talking about here. The Weather Witch. The Wind Rider, able to summon nature with less than a conscious thought. Hell, even the movies got that right.
Scream for me.
So why, in this revival of the most iconic piece of X-Men adaptive media of all time, arguably the most iconic piece of X-Men media, period, does Storm have so little to do? I'm not saying she needed to kill him or finish him off, but she should have done something. She literally got depowered, spent most of the season not having her powers or being on the team or being involved with the main plot in any way, faced the literal manifestation of her inner demons and challenged a lie that she believed about her being better off without her powers, and had that epic ass transformation scene. All for this. These are bad feelings that I have been having since day damn one. Day damn one, Vivian. Day damn one.
Called it.
As many people did. We got no time to see Storm react to Gambit's death. Not so much as an acknowledgement. And that really doesn't feel good. Yes, she did help repel Asteroid M, but it hardly made a difference, and Magneto woke up and turned it around himself anyway. This could have been a perfect setup for her repairing the electromagnetic field. That would have been better than her just sitting there on the sidelines doing virtually nothing after getting one shot by a Sentinel. It makes so many of Storm's big moments this season feel more like lip service. She gets called a goddess every 5 seconds, she gets her powerful scene here, powerful scene there, but her arc got shoved over here in the corner. Her contribution to the finale, powers-wise, barely worth commenting on. This is all you get, Storm fans. You're welcome. That's how I was feeling after watching this finale. At least, at first. But there was something else going on in my mind. I watched the episode back a couple times and it really started to sink in. I saw a Storm who, thanks to her experiences of being depowered, has a broadened perspective. Storm is one of the wisest of all the X-Men, so having her be the voice of reason is on brand. Even applying that reason to someone who is actively trying to kill them and destroy the world. When she objected to Forge and Beast making a way to permanently depower Bastion, it wasn't just for laughs. It was a sign of things to come, and I do like them having Storm not just be a power machine, but a human being with wisdom and compassion beyond her years. One who values life above all things. Like she told the adversary, all lives are worth saving. I do still wish she were more active in the fight to protect life on Earth, but I can still recognize her contribution to the finale even though they weren't power related. And I always caution Storm fans to not just reduce her to how powerful she is. A lot of people bring up how easily Storm would have clinched the W for the X-Men, either by being more active in the fight or by repairing the Earth's electromagnetic field herself. And those are valid points, but it goes right back to things I said in my very first video on this channel. Storm is rarely, if ever, given a chance to truly show off her powers and abilities outside of the comics. How many times in the animated series did Storm do some impressive weather shit only to be shot out of the sky or covered in debris and have a fit of claustrophobia? The only difference is back then, she wouldn't always be taken out of the fight with one blow. But go back and watch these episodes. Every time Storm is actually hit with something, that's it. And I get it. This is not the Storm show. Nor do I necessarily want this to be. I'd be 8,000% here for Storm getting some type of solo series. Hell, I'm writing a Storm-focused X-Men trilogy now just for fun. Just so that we can see how something of that scale would look if Storm were the focus. But as long as Storm is not the focus, this is probably what we're always gonna get. I don't think it's as easy as just saying, oh, they don't care about Storm, they don't give a fuck about what Storm fans want, they just want to keep disrespecting the Queen like they always do. If you're gonna have her be in an ensemble cast, there's going to be sacrifices. But I don't think that means that they're pointless. I still think there's a lot to enjoy here. I just wish it were something that were more connected to the main plot. This season, it was more about the Summers family, Rogue, Magneto, Charles Xavier. Hopefully next time, Storm, and even some of the other X-Men who were on the back burner this season, and I mean really on the back burner, like Morph, Beast, they hardly got to do shit. So next season, that's what I'm hoping for in season 2 of X-Men 97. What are you looking forward to in the next season of X-Men 97? How did you feel about this season? How did you feel about the finale? I will be returning later to do an overall what worked, what didn't, good, bad, and ugly X-Men 97 discussion video. And there's even been some controversy stirring up on social media that I'm also going to touch on at a later date. Not everybody's as respectful as I am when it comes to critiquing this season, and they have been letting Bo DeMayo have it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and then click this video right here to get you some more Weather Witch goddessness in your life. And until next time, keep simping.